We're live.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Hope for Healing. Wow, am I excited for everybody to be joining us this morning. So I want to welcome you to this movement. And this is a movement to really bring awareness to what we believe to be some of the most important issues that we're dealing with today. And, inside of that, instead of addressing these issues, we really came to that there's a couple of conversations that we think are pivotal to having our society and communities and families really work. And some of those conversations are centered around recovery and addiction, centered around men, centered around women, faith, and unity. And so I'd love to.
And families.
And families. Thank you, Nathan. I was just about to introduce my partner and co-founder, Nathan Benamos. So together we came up with this idea about a year and a half ago. Nathan, you say hello, jump on in here.
Yeah, hello. Sorry to cut you off there, Eli. We can't forget the families, because I keep saying it, that the heart and soul of this is families, because when people end up in addiction, it's something to do with the family and how they were raised, or it's something, or the support that they need. It goes back to the family, and then it's how we're raising the next generation that we're really creating a brighter future. So, but this is really about people. At the end of the day, this is about people and how people impact communities and how we can create a world that really thrives, or at least has some semblance of workability. So I want to thank, we have this amazing recovery panel here, and I'll let Eli introduce everyone in a second, but it's really an honor to take on the conversation for recovery, because I know this is something that's been an epidemic for a while. It's people don't talk about it enough, and it's really good that there's people that are willing to get the message out. So Eli, this is your panel, so I'll let you introduce everyone. And thanks everyone for being here.
Thanks, Nathan. So, we're going to jump in. So Hope for Healing is a movement, and inside of that movement, there's individual conversations. So right now we're talking about Hope for Recovery. And Hope for Recovery is really a conversation where we're out to transform the stigma and the misinformation that really goes around addiction and recovery. And we want to do this by hosting these really authentic conversations with people that are leaders and professionals in the field, and even people that have been through this journey on their own. And we want to break down the walls and the imaginary barriers that separate people, like so-called regular people, from people dealing with addiction. And in so we see the possibility of restoring and healing individuals and restoring families and reuniting communities. And so I'm so excited to have everybody here this morning. We have an amazing panel with us. So I'm just going to do really brief introductions, and I'm going to let each one of you kind of introduce yourselves. So we're going to start off with Tyler, and Tyler McLean is here with us from Archstone Behavioral Health, forgive me. And he is the alumni director, and he also has his own personal stake in this journey. So Tyler, you want to say hello to us this morning?
Yeah, hello everyone, and I just want to thank you guys for putting this together. I think this is a really good opportunity for to reach out to other people that that might not get this experience. Just a little bit about me. I just turned 30, and I'm celebrating in a few months, and I'll be celebrating 5 years here next month. And and because of that, that's one of my big things. I got sober at 24. I come from a pretty good family. I was in school. I was a scholar. I was an athlete. I really, I had all that. Yeah, I had that lifestyle that, I was going to move forward in life. That's what I always thought, and addiction kind of took over my life, and I got to, we're going to talk about, as we move forward through this, we're probably going to talk a lot about the stigma, and that was one of the, just to sum it up, that was a big thing that I fought. I fought this kid who was, he had a bright future, but, I had this big underlying issue, and before I knew it, a few years went by and I was an IV heroin user, and multiple treatment centers, detoxes, legal issues, and I found myself around the age of 22 just lost, and everything I always looked at, I'd never be like those people, or I'll just whatever stigma you wanted, that was who I become, and I always hear, I remember hearing a lot of, well, why, and I would even say it at a younger age, well, why don't you just stop? Why don't you get it together? Every morning, I heard someone else say this, like every morning I woke up, I didn't want to live the life I was living, but very quickly did that addiction kind of take over the day very quickly, to the point that it would be an hour after I woke up. So, we'll get into more of it, but, change is what it's all about. And it's kind of how do I get there, but like I said, I'm really grateful to be here. Eli and Nathan, I think it's a great thing what you guys are putting together here. And I'm just grateful to be a part of this.
Thanks, Tyler. What really struck me in what you just shared is, and if I didn't hear this right, forgive me, but you were almost surprised by the addiction, is what it sounds like. Like you really didn't, you never expected that to be something you were going to have to deal with in your life.
Exactly.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. So, and of course, we're going to circle back around. So let's jump in. Alex, I know Alex now. We've known each other easily over 5 years. Alex is the COO at Bright Futures, which is also another really awesome, reputable treatment center here in South Florida. And I know Alex is, what I love about Alex is that he brings the real, like, technical business side to things. Like, Alex kicks butt in business, but he also brings this huge heart side to him because of his own personal journey in all of this. And so, Alex, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. Very grateful to be here. I'm not used to being on panels like this. It's still surreal to me to have opportunities to reach out to the community and be in a position like this. It's pretty great. Kind of just like Tyler said. I mean, I got sober at a pretty young age. I would like to think at 26. I just actually celebrated 8 years on the 6th, which is pretty cool. I got into this industry. It's an interesting journey, and I think a lot of us can kind of relate to it in the industry. Just my life qualified me to work in this industry. I had been through so many trials and tribulations and going in and out of facilities, and it was just at the end of the road. I remember when I finally ended up at the doors of the last facility that I went to. It's just like, I want to work in this field. What do I got to do? Wow. And it was literally a year to the date that I got sober. They're like, get a year sober and come talk to us. And I worked overnight adolescent tech. I was the best one you'd ever seen. I'll go against anybody. And the field kind of just took me on that journey. I was thinking when you asked me, like, tell me how you got into this industry, and I just applied, and like, my recovery brought me into this field, and I've never left. It's been 7 years. I've worked every position of the industry you could possibly think of, and every position has given me a different piece on to see, like, what part of the journey I can impact on a patient or a client. And I think this is awesome, and I really appreciate you guys what you're doing. It's always the stigma of, like, where's the disconnect between what we do, the people in recovery, and the community? Like, how do we get our patients and the clients? And when I was one, like, what did I lack when I would try to get back into the community, and or try to get back into my family? So I think this is a great platform for us to be able to bridge that gap, and to see how the community can help us, and to see how we can help each other. And just, again, I'm grateful to be here. Thank you guys for asking me. It's still surreal, and I never want to feel like I'm not new in this industry and new to recovery, because I want to keep learning. And I think that's part of the journey. So I appreciate you, Eli, and thank you for asking me. That's it.
I love that you bring like this youthful exuberance to everything. Like you're always like, it's always like new and fresh when you talk to you. There's nothing like gets old and stagnant. And I love that. And it's like, and what you said too about like literally being qualified by the school of life, right? Like, and I don't think, I think that's probably one of the most true things in this field is I think that people that have gone through the journey are really, I don't want to say the most equipped, but they're equipped in a special way to help people along this journey. And so, I love that. And I'm sure everybody that you come across loves the energy you bring. It's always that positivity, that upbeat, like, yes, we can do this. This is happening. Anything's possible type of vibe. So
It depends
really
on the time of
appreciate
day.
it. Well, I guess we got you at a good time right now.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And now, definitely last and definitely not least, we have Dr. Barry Ryman. So Barry is responsible for business development at Recovery Unplugged, forgive me. And it's been featured on some really awesome publications over the years. And really, what I get from Dr. Barry is he has a passion for this work. And he's out to really, he shares from his own personal experiences, and in that he's out to really he's an influencer in this field. And so Barry, you want to say a little bit more about that and introduce yourself here this morning?
Yeah, Eli, I think you just summed it all up, so I'm good. No, I'm just want to thank you guys also, Tyler, Alex. It was good hearing from you guys. Alex, I think said it best. There's some people that literally just qualified to do what we do. My story is not really any different from anybody else's. I also got clean at a young age. I was 20 years old.
Wow.
I'm only 22 now. No kidding. I just celebrated last Saturday my 25th anniversary. In this journey that we call life in recovery. Time just flies by. I think trials and tribulations, I look back at where I was and sometimes I just pinch myself. Alex, you were talking about like, how do you wind up on a panel like this? Like, you just do. You're qualified. Everybody on here is qualified. This is not you don't learn this stuff out of books. I'm blessed that I feel blessed at least that I have a clinical degree, as a psych doctor, but at the same time that pales in comparison to my own research and development that I did, when I was out there. And, what I'm hoping to instill in anybody watching today. And I think what one of the purposes of this entire movement is it's really just about hope, right? That, if Alex can be on this panel, if Tyler can be on this panel, if Eli can put something together like this, right, along with Nathan, if I'm sitting up here, I was a hot mess. And, a lot of people don't realize that, because they see the person, that's here before you today. But, all of us, and I think I could speak for all of us, a number of years ago, however many years that is, wouldn't have dreamed to be sitting on this panel today. And so for me, it's really just about keeping it green. It's about understanding that I never forget where I come from. And it's about, breathing hope into the lungs of people that feel like they can't breathe anymore. And, the hope is once we resuscitate those lives, as they get stronger, they turn around and help somebody else. And that's the entire concept of, what recovery and what the recovery movement is all about. I look at people, why I still love what I do. I love to see broken people get better. And to me, there's no bigger payoff than seeing somebody who's coming in just frail, fragile, life has beaten them up. Their way of life has beaten them up, to turn around and get that year and start working in the industry for them to turn around and help somebody else. So I'm very grateful to be here and look forward to sharing with you guys on this panel.
Wow, Barry. Again, as I said, the passion just comes across, the caring and the passion, the compassion for people. I think it's really, I love what you just shared there, you know, like how it's really is our journey here, and how each one of us, you know, that you really feel that you learned more from your journey in life than you actually did from getting a PhD is it's pretty impressive, you know, like that, not maybe not more, but that it was almost equal to the amount of learning that you got from each one of those. So I find that pretty remarkable, right? And then bringing that into the field here, like you said. So I want to jump in with you guys, and we're going to go a little deeper. So what I'd love to hear from you is, so what were some of the major problems that you faced when you were dealing with your recovery? And what do you see, and kind of tying that together, what do you see are some of the major struggles or challenges that other people are going to be facing when they try to take on their recovery? So whoever wants to jump in with that one, or actually, you know what, I'll call you guys out. Alex, what do you think about that?
I knew that was going to happen. Yeah, I mean, what I faced personally when I got sober, I mean, a lot of the stuff was, it was my behaviors. Once I put the drink down, the substance down, it was how I acted and how I treated people. Like that was the hardest thing for me to kind of face and get back into society and know like I can't do anything and let me back up a little bit. I was born with this thing, like as far back as I can remember, I've had these behaviors and these actions and the way that I treated people and the way that I talk to people. And like, I kind of wanted my sobriety, like look at what I did, to just speak for itself. And then, after continual trying this and just putting my sobriety in front and being like, hey guys, look what I did. It's my sobriety here. This is what I got. I got 30 days sober. It's like, people, family, friends, support want to see like your behaviors and how you start treating people. And if you're on time, if you're punctual, there's a lot of, I mean, I was raised in recovery. I like to tell people that all the time. I mean, everything that I know today, and again too, it's just like people like Barry putting it, blazing this trail before me and learning. I think this is the only industry, I don't know about other industries, when we meet people and I'm like, Tyler, how you doing? How's work going? Hey, how's your recovery going? And like, I genuinely care about like how Tyler and Barry are doing, and we lean on each other and we lean on each other for support. But the struggles that I had personally was I had no skills. I really had no skill set. I started my journey and with drugs and alcohol, like in early middle school, late middle school, high school. Never had a career, never got the opportunity to go to school. Always thought that I was less than and not as smart as and didn't learn as well. Turns out I was, lazy and never really put anything into education and learning and all that. But I think that was the hardest thing was kind of finding like a sense of community and finding purpose and placement for me. And going to treatment gave me that opportunity to kind of link into that community and find some people that I could kind of connect with and share my experience in recovery. And then meeting people at the facility really helped show me, they linked it for me. It was the AA, that really helped link it to me. And, and I think the hardest thing for me, and thank God that I did have the opportunity. It wasn't the treatment. It wasn't the going to meetings. It wasn't, going to groups. It was a time in between that, and I had good people that guided me along the way to know what to do in between the times, like when I was actually like participating in recovery. And, it turned in from, I was terrified to have like a 3-hour gap in my schedule to where I kind of figured out how to fill that time in with, like positive things. But I had to relearn, and again, for a long-winded answer, I mean, I had to relearn everything or learn everything, what to do with my time, like how not to be in trouble, how not to do something illegal. And it sounds crazy to some people, but it's just how my brain worked, so I was resetting everything. Anyways, I kind of see that facing and people in recovery today, like society accepting us back into the program. You have a program of recovery that tells you to be rigorously honest in everything that you do. And I think you do that and be like, hey, I'm in recovery. I'm Alex, and I'm really looking forward to this job. And like, oh, we don't hire people in recovery. So then it's confusing, and you're like, when do I say it? When do I don't? And you kind of learn along the way, like, hey, if they ask you, you can mention it, but if they also know that like they can tell you that we don't want to hire somebody in recovery because we've had bad experience with that. Love to see our success rates outside of treatment be better and last longer. But just I think time has shown that it's not, and we need more awareness, and we need more help. We need more help from our local businesses and our local communities to support us and ask us how we're doing, because it is a struggle. So I do see that facing with the industry today, with opportunity for the person who doesn't have an education or has a record or has a background, and taking a chance on us. And to see that we can be of use, and we're loyal people. We just and a sense of community and being a part of that. And it's not just like the recovery community, it spreads out so much. You kind of I think it was Nathan was talking about the family, it's like it's a family disease. It really starts at home, and it starts how, your family conducts themselves. And, so it goes back like right into the community. We don't just sit in our little recovery community. We're in your community. We're in everybody's community. We're in the churches. We're in your offices. We're working at warehouses. We're everywhere. And I think it's the stigma for us. It's like, we're scared to tell people we're in recovery sometimes, especially early in recovery, to let people lend a hand for judgment. So, I think that's part of the, I think I answered the question somewhere in there.
No, you definitely did, Alex. What I got from you was one of the most difficult things is that re-education of yourself, but also kind of having other people to learn to start trusting you again inside of that re-education of yourself, right? And somehow reintegrating back into society, and all the challenges that takes, as far as trusting yourself, and then being willing to work through those. Because listen, for a lot of us, there was times where we burnt a lot of bridges, and the fact of the matter is it takes time sometimes to repair those bridges. And we sometimes are taking good actions or doing the right actions, but we've got to be willing to keep showing up. And there's that re-education for ourselves and for the other people. So no, I think you answered that question very well. Thank you. Barry, I would love to hear what you think. So, what were your problems, what you were facing, when you started with your journey, and what do you think people today are really most challenged with?
There's two things that stick out to me. Alex touched on one of them, which was the behaviors. I remember, I don't know, I think I had 6 months. No, I think I had maybe 6 months or a year clean. And I took a job at Blockbuster Video and Music. Remember those things, the little VCR back in like 1996 or 1997. And I got hired at this brand new store that had just opened. Like, we were part of opening it, and it had not only movies but CDs, because we sold music too. And I helped myself I built like the greatest CD collection ever, and I didn't pay for any of it. And so at a year clean, loss prevention came in, and 7 of us all got terminated at the same time for stealing. And the reason I bring that up is, just because you get clean doesn't mean the behaviors change right away, just like Alex said. So I think it's important to at least look at how you're living while in recovery. And you can't really call yourself in recovery if you're living dirty. So, but the greatest thing is you learn from it. And that was the last time I ever got fired from a place for stealing. And P.S. My whole CD collection, my car got broken into a couple months later, and it was taken. So God has a sense of humor, and I learned my lesson. The other thing that comes to mind is patience, right? Delayed gratification. And I know anybody who works in this field knows and sees this every single day. You have somebody that comes into treatment, they're there for 5 days, and they're like, I want to leave. This isn't working for me, right? I'm just not cut out for recovery. This isn't working. I'm not feeling better. Now we say to that person, like, how long were you using for? Oh, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years. How long are you sober? Right? 5 days. The scales don't weigh out, right? And I think that as addicts and alcoholics, we are so trained to live in instant gratification, right? And addiction is instant gratification. Addiction is feel good now, feel like shit later, right? Where recovery is feel like shit now, feel better later. So it's really about convincing the person to put in enough time where the payoff of being sober really starts to outweigh the payoff of going back out, if that makes sense, right? But I feel like the way we live our lives in active addiction, it's, if I was down to my last 20 bucks and my dealer told me, here, I can sell you this awesome drug and you can do it, you can shoot it, but you're not going to feel the effects for 30 days. I'm definitely not going to be buying that with my last 20 bucks, right? And I think most people can relate to that statement. Recovery is that drug, right? But we're so trained, we're mentally wired for need to feel good right this minute, need to change how I feel right this minute. And there's so much power behind that we can't see the forest through the trees. And we surrender and come into recovery, come into treatment, whatever the case is, however you're doing it. And we still have this expectation that just because we stop right now, we're automatically going to start feeling better. And that's just not the case. The other thing is, and this is my favorite, that, people who are early in recovery, and I can only speak for myself, like I felt like I should have been rewarded for stuff that most people did for their entire lives without a second thought. Like I would go into a meeting and share an early recovery, like I showed up to work today every day this week, like clap for me. You know what I mean? I went into Walgreens and I did not steal, like,
Yeah.
and so what we have to learn is that we're relearning behaviors that people already know. And that's okay, right? But we can't always get that pat on the back for it. So I think there's a lot of challenges in early recovery. What I try to instill in the clients that I speak to on a daily basis is just sit tight. I promise, man, like I'm sicker than most, like to have fun more than the next person. And if I can be here for this long and I'm a satisfied customer of being in recovery, life doesn't suck once you get clean. And I think that there's a stigma out there that, if somebody lets go of their best friend, whatever that substance is, the rest of their lives is going to be humdrum and boring. And I think that, everybody on this panel probably spends at least a small portion of their day on a daily basis convincing somebody otherwise. And, that's kind of the message that we have to get out there. Millions and millions of people would not be recovering and be in long-term recovery if every day we woke up going, oh God, another day I have to face clean, or another day I have to be sober. It's like you learn to live in recovery and your life gets really good. So.
Wow, Barry, you painted a really broad picture there. And if you touched on many things I think are super important. What I take away from you most is the willingness to over time be responsible and to alter your behavior. And as you touched on, like, and I believe this too, is recovery is so much more than just not doing drugs, right? And that is the first step, of course, to recovery. But then there's so much more to it. And that's what you're talking about, I think, is starting to embrace the richness of life and starting to really be responsible for your behaviors. And, I think there comes a time in recovery where the responsibility actually shifts from a burden, where, like you were talking about, where like, oh my God, I should be getting rewarded. And I wish I was getting, people should be seeing what I'm doing quicker and should really be, more excited about what I'm up to. And then there comes a level where it shifts and you start doing it for yourself too, and you start seeing that progress and that growth for yourself, and you actually start to become excited about what's possible. And
there's actually one really powerful statement, right? And this is something I've talked about forever. The concept of early recovery is learning to act ourselves into right thinking instead of trying to think ourselves into right acting. Right? So, to put it in other terms, if you put one foot in front of the other, eventually you're going to want to be walking in the direction you're walking in, even if you don't want to, right? So it's really about bringing the body, you know, the oldest saying, right, is you bring your body and the mind will follow. As addicts and alcoholics, I mean, I can't tell you how many times when I was in active addiction that I knew I needed to stop, and I thought about it, and I just thought about it, and I thought about it, and it just never happened, or it was always going to be tomorrow, you know? So, you know, if you act yourself into right thinking, you have a better shot at life, you know? So if you bring the body enough times, eventually you're going to want to be doing the behavior you start. It was the way I looked at meetings, you know, when I first started. Like, I thought for sure these 12-step meetings were a cult. They were going to make me shave my head and go door to door, sell books, hand flowers out at the airport. I didn't know what to expect, but I went to meetings until I finally wanted to go to meetings. You know, I went from going to meetings early on, sitting in death row in the back, until eventually, you know, I went to meetings and sat up front, and I felt better.
Wow. Yeah, it really is. You got to give yourself the space and the patience, right, to go through this process. And that's part of it too, I heard, is like, don't be in a rush, right? Like, hang out, take a breath, you know. Life isn't, it's not, you don't have to run and catch up to it. Give yourself a moment. So Tyler, I want to hear from you, you know, same question, you know, really is, you know, what was it like for you? What were your major challenges when you were first dealing with all of this? And what do you see as some of the major challenges that people face today? Got you on mute, Tyler. Hold on. There we go.
Absolutely, and it's really cool that this panel, you know, all of us can relate in that early, you know, getting sober at a young age. And you know, it's funny, I watched that new movie last night with Mila Kunis, and it's basically on recovery and drug addiction, and they draw up this picture that she needs to get to 7 days sober and her life's going to be perfect. And it just wasn't like that for me. Just like what Barry was talking about, I had this expectation that if I called up a treatment center and I went to detox, that my life would get better. Right. And I would instantly, you know, as long as I'm feeling better, you know, it was immediately, all right, I got to get a job, I got to make money, and I'll get all those things that are going to make me feel how I think everybody else feels, you know, and that didn't work, you know. I really like what Barry had to say about that instant gratification, that I expected to be okay. You know, and very quickly I would leave these places, whether it was a detox, whether it was a full program, and you know, I'd get thrown back out into real life and not have a clue. You know, Alex mentioned AA. That's, you know, 12-step programs that people get out, and I think that's one of the biggest problems that we face is we think we know what to do. You know, and the time that I ended up getting sober, the guy ended up asking to be my sponsor. One of the first things he said to me was, Tyler, you're signing up for the slowest process that you're ever going to come in contact with. You know, and it scared me, absolutely scared me. So, you know, I didn't really go into what I do, but I focus. I'm director of alumni, you know, so I'm always involved with new sobriety, and you know, what worked for me was how do I stray away from those thoughts of, okay, I have to be a member of society, I have to make money, I have to have a family, you know, all these things which I really just need to slow down and sit. How do I do that? You know, and get involved with the community, you know, volunteering. We talk about service and recovery. You know, that was such a foreign concept to do something for somebody else. And then I would get a good feeling from that. You know what I mean? And so I had these, you know, Alex hit on that, like, meetings are great. Meetings are important. You know, I'm a big supporter of meetings, but there's so much time outside of meetings, outside of meeting with your sponsor, outside of groups that I didn't know how to handle, you know, and how do I fill up that time? Just like he said, you know, and for me it was getting involved with the community any way that I possibly can. I said I was an athlete. I got involved with coaching. You know, I lost the love for sports, and it was something early on that another guy in sobriety who had, you know, much more time than I did, much more experience, was already coaching, and I followed his lead, and I got to hang around kids, and it was something I never would have gotten out of treatment and been like, all right, you know what, I'm going to go do this because this is going to make you feel better, you know. So it's really just. It's the hardest place to be when, you know, you just find yourself just coming off of, you know, that all I knew was how to get high, how to get numb, you know, and transitioning to that scary word of recovery, you know, it's a lot of work, you know, and that's why I remain honest with everyone that, and especially the newer, I mean, the younger guys, you know, the younger guys who I can relate to, and that I see in them the exact way that I thought, you know, was kind of, not that this is stupid, but that it just wouldn't work, you know, and, you know, kind of battling through that with other people, showing them ways that they can just feel okay with themselves, you know, and if you just stick around and learn about yourself, and then that word change eventually comes into play, you know, and you start to wake up, and like Barry was talking about, you start to enjoy. They started very small, but I started to enjoy small moments, you know, and I was okay with this lifestyle, but
Tyler, you brought it up so well, and since each one of you has touched on it, maybe I want to hear at least from you, what allowed you, like, what was it that caused the shift, right? So you were going down one path, you were dealing with your pain, you were dealing with whatever you're dealing with, and you were using the drugs, and I can hear there was like that, you know, there was idea, but what was it that allowed you to make that shift, or to start looking to do something different?
I mean, for me, it was 100% other people. Whenever I moved forward, whether I went to a sober living facility or whatever it was, I always put myself in what I knew. You know, I put myself around people that were just like me at the time, and it was that shift where I started seeing people who, quote unquote, I looked at as, oh, well, they're losers. They're trying to get their life together. You know what I mean? And, you know, it's because they had that, you know, they had different books that they were reading, you know, they were meeting with some stranger once a week, you know, and they told me about it, and they said, instead of going here, they're going to this meeting tonight, you know, and I just I went along with them, you know, I had very little. So, a ride to a meeting and a dinner at night sounded pretty good, you know, and I followed their lead, you know, and these guys weren't even guys. I'm not even talking about people who had much more time than I did. It were people at the same level as me, if we're talking about sober time, but they were just trying, you know, they were doing what Barry was talking about. They were kind of letting this process just kind of transform, you know, and I really just did what they were doing, you know, and that's one of the biggest. I mean, just to go back to the main question, you know, we all think that we know how how to fix ourselves, how to get to whatever point we think we want to get to in life. And when I kind of stepped back and was just, I don't know, you know, that's when I accepted help, right? That's when I had that shift, you know?
Wow. Thank you, Tyler. And we're going to come back because I want to see really what you did in the beginning, but I want to touch. So Barry, I would love to hear from you too, just to touch on that too. Like what was the access point, or what was the pain point, or, you know, where did you start making recovery or wanting to be sober? How did that show up as something that you wanted in your life, or where did that, you know, and then inside of that, what do you believe are some of the like small steps that other people can start to take towards their recovery?
I think that's a great question. And you hear it said a lot, okay? And you hear it said a lot. You really have to want this to get it. I'm sure every single person on this panel has heard that before. If you don't want it, don't worry about it. You won't get it. I completely and totally disagree with that statement. I call bullshit because, and again, I can only speak from my experience. I was not in good shape. Okay. I'm 6'3" tall. I was 140 pounds soaking wet.
Wow.
In and out of hospitals, had a grand mal seizure on Thanksgiving Day in 1995. Like, my life was not going good. Okay. Just to put it lightly. But I never said, I want to stop getting high. Just never uttered those words. I thought I was fine because I surrounded myself with people who were doing the exact same things that I was. And even though I might have been a little bit worse, I wasn't hanging out with people that weren't using, you know, so the denial that was in my head was big, right? And what do they say denial stands for? Don't even notice I am lying, right? So when we're in
Wow.
denial, we believe our own stuff. It's not like we're trying to lie. It's not like we're trying to BS, right? That's just who we are at the time. And, you know, I had a girlfriend at the time who basically ratted me out, you know, to my family, who already, you know, they knew something was going on. Like this had been a process, you know, I had been in and out of some IOP programs and I got intervened on and was basically threatened to be disowned. And, you know, I remember June 19th, 1996, I showed up to my psychologist's office for my individual therapy session, which I had been doing now for a year, you know, trying to do it like, you know, trying to, you know, magically change by seeing somebody once a week for 45 minutes because that would make my parents happy. And, you know, again, I was 20 years old and not living my best life. And I walk into that appointment and my mother, my father, and my sister were all sitting there. And I'm like, oh, gig's up, you know? So they do this intervention on me and I don't have a choice at this point. I had been living on my own, but, you know, I couldn't continue to support myself. And so I took the leap of faith and I made a deal with myself. And I said that I'm going to give this thing 90 days. And after 90 days, if I don't look better, if I don't feel better, if my relationships haven't improved, drugs and alcohol would always be there and I could always go back out. And I went into treatment. I did my deal, right? And I continued with intensive outpatient and I started going to these cult-like meetings. And I stuck to come hell or high water, no matter what, for 90 days in a row. I'm just not going to pick up. No matter how bad I do or don't want to do it, I'm just not gonna. And I made it to that 90th day and I looked in the mirror and I looked better and I felt better and my relationships had improved. And like a good addict, I said, wow, if I feel this good at 90 days, I wonder how I'll feel at 6 months. And so it goes back to what I said before about, you know, acting ourselves into right thinking. If you bring the body, the mind will follow. For me, that was so important because recovery got me before I really got it, right? I got out of my own way and it wasn't something I had planned on. Again, I didn't want to stop, but what I did want was less consequences in my life. So if somebody would have said to me like, hey, Barry, we see how you're living. Do you desire less consequences? That answer would have been yes, right? So what I learned was a valuable lesson at the time, that if I want the consequences to stop, I must stop doing the things that are creating the consequences. And it was like, as simple as that sounds today, it was like such a complicated thing that I couldn't wrap my head around, right? So being in recovery, and what I try to instill in people who are in early recovery, this is not about convincing you that it doesn't feel good to be high. It's not about convincing you that it doesn't feel good to escape or to numb out, right? Being in recovery is about, if you just give that up initially, eventually you'll feel good without having to do those things that you think you needed to do. That therapist that I saw early on, I remember having like, I don't know, 6 or 8 months clean, and I was still going to him for individual therapy. And at this point I was brainwashed, right? I drank the Kool-Aid of the program. I was gung-ho recovery, drugs are bad, okay, that whole. And so he said to me, he's like, Barry, he's like, if I created a drug you could do every day and not have any consequences, right? No loss of job, no loss of money in your account, your family is all happy with you still, would you do it? And my initial response was, no, drugs are bad. I'm not. And he looked at me and he said these words. He said, if you can toot on a substance all day, every day, and not have any consequences, you wouldn't do it. And I thought about it for a second and I'm like, hell yeah, I would. Right. So that was the turning point for me, where I realized, who doesn't like to feel good? Right? I mean, who literally, how we live our lives today in recovery, the amount of meetings we go to, how many times we call our sponsor, how many times we pray, how many times we reach out to someone who's struggling. At the end of the day, if you really break it down, there's a selfish motive behind it. What's that motive? We want to feel better. Right? That's just human nature. Nobody wants to walk around feeling like crap, right? So my issue was, how I chose to feel better when I was using was actually making me feel worse in the end, and was killing me. So our motivation to feel good is probably way stronger than our motivation to self-destruct. So it was about really just flipping the script, learning better ways to feel better, letting go of the stuff that made us feel better for a minute and made us feel worse forever. So I don't know if that answered your question.
I think that's so authentic and real that I love it. It's absolutely true. I don't know anybody that doesn't want to be comfortable. And I mean, people have different ways of being comfortable, but that's just, I think it's just nonsense that we pretend that that's not the truth, right? Is if we could be, like you said, if there was a drug like that, I'd be taking it. Sure.
Who wouldn't?
I mean, we all want to be comfortable. And then there's an impact for some of our choices. And that's what I hear, is that you didn't want to change, you didn't see it as a necessity, but you were aware of the impact on your relationships and on other areas of your life that created some unworkability for you, or created pain or hardships in your life. And you did want those to end. And that was something. And when you started seeing that this work could actually impact that it wasn't just, words and stuff, and like, oh, if you don't do things, we'll get better. And you actually started to see it. I hear in that you were inspired to keep going, or I don't know if that's the right word, but you're at least,
it's the payoff. It's, you can look at it like just starting out in a gym, right? And working out. And you walk in there and you see everybody in that gym that's been putting the time in. They're all cut and lean and they look great.
Yeah.
So you sign up and you get a trainer and you do your thing with that trainer that day. And the next morning you wake up and your legs are all wobbly, and you go to wash your face in the sink in the morning and you can't lift your arms to your face and you're in pain. And your first thought is, I'm not freaking doing that again. Right. And you look on your appointment list and you're like, oh, I got the trainer again today. My first thought is, I'm canceling. Like, this hurt. This was not good. But you continue to show up, right? And after 2 or 3 weeks, you go in the bathroom and you take your shirt off and you look in the mirror and you're like, for the first time, you notice something. There's the reward, right there's a click in the brain, right, where the payoff is there. And now all of a sudden, guess what happens? You start looking forward to working out in the gym. And now you continue that for a number of weeks or a number of months, and you're walking down the street and someone says, "Hey, Alex, wow, you look great. What have
You
you
look
been doing?" Boom, light goes off in your head again, another reward, right? And then after 6 months, you're bringing other people with you to the gym. And like a good addict, after a year, you've already gotten your personal training license. And then in 2 years, you own your own gym. So, that's basically, and
And
recovery can be looked at the same way.
well, I love it. And you've all kind of followed that track. So like in a way. And so Alex, I want to hear from you too. Like, what was it? Where did you, how, what was it? What did you see that you were like, I got to make a change? Or what was it that gave you the strength to make that change or to take that on? And what do you see, for other people that you would suggest for them as small steps or how to start this journey?
Yeah, absolutely. And much like Barry and Tyler, kind of my experience with everything was it's so similar. I just picture myself exactly, in my portion of my recovery journey. I've been there, I've done it, and like in parts of Barry's, it's so something that kind of struck me too was what Barry was talking about too. It's like I've been the guy that wanted it the most. I've been the guy that's needed it the most. And then the one time I got sober, I was the guy that actually did the work. And they talk about it for the guy, they say it in the rooms, and I heard it's like, Alex, I don't care if you want, I don't care if you need it. If you're not putting in the work, you're not getting the results. And the gym analogy, that's all that I knew was I was an athlete as well. And it's like someone was telling me early in recovery, they're saying that, I never got active in my recovery. I always went there because of circumstance. And much like Tyler, my first 2, 3, 4, I went to seven treatment centers, and much like Tyler, you have support, right? Like I had support. It was like, Alex, let's do this first time. Second time, I was like, Alex, let's do this. Third time, Alex, let's do this. Fourth time, Alex. Fifth time, no release. Sixth time, whatever, Alex is in treatment again. And the last time, nobody's there. I didn't have a release to sign. I didn't have money for people to call. Like I ended up in jail. I ended up locked up. They're actually going back a little bit more. It's like I had this therapist and this guy's like we were getting in trouble a lot when we were kids, and I had this guy talk to me as a counselor, and he's like, Al, there's 2 things gonna happen to you, and I guarantee you this: you're either gonna end up in my treatment, my rehab, or I'm gonna see your name in the paper, and you're gonna be dead at a young age. Sure enough, 17 years old, I walked into a group, and who do you think was sitting there? His name was Ashley Kilpatrick. I'll never forget him. I walked in that room, and he's like, I'm glad I didn't see you in the paper. But like my story was like, I've been told my entire life, like, Alex, you got it. Like, watch after this. Like my parents were told it. Like I had, that I wanted more. I was 1,000 miles an hour in one direction, or I was 0. So, after being told that for so long, I never really understood, I was burning all these bridges throughout my life and throughout these opportunities, like these blessings that I had in my life to go to treatment and I have an opportunity at recovery, and like how lucky I was to have a family that supported me. And I feel like I always went from a place of here with, things and family, and to entering recovery was like a jump down, right? Because it was like they took away things from me, and finally, I got to a point in my life where I was here, and jumping into recovery was like a step up, like I jumped into a community. So I will tell you absolutely 100%. Like I remember walking into treatment my last time, and after having, being in jail, and after having everything removed from you, and I can't move, I have to wait. They tell me when I get to eat. Sometimes you didn't eat. Sometimes you skip meals, and this thing that just overcame me is that, I remember that my intervention after I got out, and it was much like Barry, where I was like, and that movie Tyler's talking about, it's like, if I could just, and I was in jail, 30 days, and I'm like, oh, I got through, I look good, feel good, I did a couple push-ups, I read half a book, John Smoltz biography, I felt better, and I get out, and the second I got out, my feet started moving, and I got high. Without even thinking, it just, my feet started taking me straight to get high, and I had no action behind that, and I had no anything, I didn't learn anything other than drying out. my parents were doing their intervention, and I heard them talking about it. And they're like, hey, this is the last thing we're going to do. You know, this is the last chance. And I remember yelling to them like, yo, you guys don't have to do this. You guys don't have to do the intervention. Like, I'm ready. I'm ready. And I remember walking into that facility with a sense of gratitude. And I was grateful. And I was grateful for the people around there. And I was grateful for the guidance that was given me. And I never understood, like, AA and recovery is the last house on the block for me. And I didn't open the door and walk in. I just kind of crashed through the ceiling. You know, and I was like asking people to help me like rebuild my life. So I literally needed to ask questions the entire way. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? You know, and if you were like me, and people like me, we're cunning, we're smart, we know how to get through life, we know how to use, we know how to adapt, we know how to be chameleons, we know how to blend in. And I had a guy tell me that, you know, Alex, my entire life, my gifts and talents would take me where my character couldn't keep me. Okay. And like, say it again, it's like my God-given ability would take me where my character just could not keep me. And,
Wow.
you know, in recovery.
You say that one more time, Alex. That is so profound, man. I hope everybody heard that.
Yeah. It was a guy, you know, told me that. He said, my God-given ability would take me where my character couldn't keep me. And I would always get to these doors in life. And then, you know, without trying that hard, because I had this God-given ability to get there, and they would just slam in my face by undoing. And then I enter recovery and I start following the rules, and I start following people like Barry, even someone with one day more than me. And, you know, I watched how they're living, and like the trick about it and the thing about it is we don't just have that meeting. I don't just sign off and I'm leaving here. Like, you know, the people that I interact with in recovery, the people that I interact with in my facility, they're in recovery. Like, they're my people. I'm going to see them in the rooms, and I have to keep this up. So, you know, that character started building, and I noticed that I got a job, and it's like I had one for 30 days. I was like, what's happening? And I just kept excelling through life, and these doors weren't slamming in my face. Like, other doors just kept opening. And what ended up happening was like, there's principles behind what we do. And I end up living, you know, with character today, and these doors just keep opening for me, you know? So I think that I just got to a point in my life where like, I knew this, like I knew for a long time, like it was sobriety or I'm going to die. I was going to be in that newspaper. And once I actually worked the steps, I'm proud to say, you know, it took me a long time to get to recovery, but the one time that I actually put in effort, you know, I've been sober 8 years, and It's because I added that character to this. So, you know, it doesn't have to get that bad. You know, my wife is 8 years, and she's like, oh, I went to treatment one time. I was like, that's amazing, you know, but like I missed out on all these opportunities because I was so consumed in self. I didn't realize like the support that I had around me.
Wow.
You know, and it can get worse, and it will get worse unless you give yourself to some sort of program. So that was my experience with that.
Wow, Alex. Thank you. I love your story, man. It's really genuine, you know, and you can just tell how many, you got to be really willing, right? I in my groups, sometimes I say that to people. I say, you know, what's this to me, the secret ingredient in recovery? And people say, well, you got to go to meetings, and you got to do, and to me, it boils down to, and I know this is way oversimplifying it, obviously, and there isn't only one thing, but you have to be willing. You have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to get hurt. You have to be willing to risk yourself. You have to be willing to take a shot. You know, you really have to be willing to go after it. And that's what I really take away from your story, is that you kept going with it. Right. And you kept allowing yourself to discover. Tyler, we're going to kind of combine this as we're kind of wrapping up here. So I want to hear from you, like, so what do you think are some of the small steps or the first steps that somebody who's struggling with addiction, who's just, you know, on the fence right now, or even worse than on the fence, is really deep in the pull or the pain of addiction? What are some of the small steps they could take, and what do you see possible for the future with addiction, like as we move this forward and we start expanding these conversations and everything like that?
Yeah, so I mean, we've been talking about, you know, a lot of this, like you know, we brought up 12-step recovery. We brought up how hard it is to, you know, acclimate ourselves in early recovery, you know, I was listening to a video the other day, and it was talking about you know, a lot of people view the opposite of addiction as the word sobriety and the word clean time, you know, and he went on to explain how it's, you know, the opposite is really like love and human connection, you know, and I never gave those things a shot. And then he goes on, you know, there's, you know, finding yourself and this new lifestyle that we've been talking about, and almost a byproduct of that is your clean time. You know, I learned how to live life. You know, Alex hit on that a bunch. Like I knew, I mean, not just how to stay sober, but I didn't know how to get insurance. I didn't know how to pay rent. You know, I didn't know how to write a check. You know, I didn't know how to do laundry. Like I just didn't know how to do anything, you know, and we've been hitting on it the whole time. The support I got from other people when I was open and willing to give those, I mean, the support's there. I had the same situation that Alex talked about. You know, at the beginning, it's like, oh, Tyler, you can do this. You know, you're a young kid. You got the world ahead of you. And, you know, the 8th, 9th, and 10th time, they're like, you know, they know you by name and they fill out all your information for you. You know what I mean? And just like, all right, well, I hope, you know, I hope this isn't the time, you know, and I became a joke to myself. You know, oh, I wonder how long I'll stay sober this time. You know, those were the things I told myself. And when I hear that from other people, just give yourself a shot, you know, like, and I mean, just to follow up with your second question, like what's possible? Anything's possible. You know, I was unemployable. I hurt every person in my life that ever showed me any type of support or help, family, friends, any relationship I had in recovery or out. I mean, I was not, I don't know. Nobody wanted to be around me, you know, and to be able to say, you know, I got married a year ago, you know, a little over a year ago. You know, I ended up graduating college. You know, it was the things that I just kind of X'd off my list. You know, they say you were along your, you know, you can't even dream it up. Like my life today and the things that have happened, just because, not because I seek them out, absolutely not. It's because I listen to guys like Alex, I listen to guys like Barry and other guys who were put into my life. And Barry hit on that earlier, that as long as I do, you know, what other people suggest to me, as long as I try to keep moving forward, whatever that means for me at that time in that moment, you know, these results kind of just show up. These miracles happen. You know, I'll never forget the biggest thing that hit me. My mother, she'll actually this August be celebrating 13 years sober. And she kind of surprised me. It was my 1 year. You know, I went up to visit her for the first time, and I was getting ready to do my amends to her and stuff. And she had me go to a meeting with her, and you know, they ended up asking me to celebrate my 1 year with them. You know, and these people came up to me that I didn't know, that were telling me how proud my mom has been talking about me. And it was just one of those moments where you're just like, I can't believe this. You know what I mean? Barry's talking about all we want to do is get that good feeling. That 4 years later, that good feeling, I get goosebumps when I talk about it. You know what I mean? And I never would have been able to see those things, you know, but,
Tyler, I'm so sorry to cut you off, but I want to just wrap this up. You know, what I love about that, what's beautiful is, as you said, is what I hear is anything is possible. And inside of that, the biggest thing is it's possible to restore those broken relationships that we've hurt and destroyed over the years, and to actually have the love and affinity that we look for in our lives. Listen, guys, I just want to, as you saw, that was an hour and it just flew by. It flew by for me anyways. I thank you all so much for your generosity, for your courage, and for your authenticity here and sharing with people what you've been through. You know, we are going to wrap up, and if you have just a quick closing thought, anything you want to leave us with, I'm going to give you the opportunity to do that real quick. Anything anybody wants to leave us with as we wrap up here? Anything pressing that somebody's just like, this is just something I want to leave everybody with, like a tidbit or anything? And it's okay if we don't, just checking in. All right. Well, listen, guys, this has been, I hope that the people watching have gotten value out of this. And, you know, I'm going to turn it over to Nathan now. And I thank everybody that came and participated, and anybody that listens to the recording. I hope this is of value to you.
Thank you, Eli. So this is the end of the recovery panel. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, or if you're here on Zoom, in all those locations, I just posted a link to the breakout line where Eli and these fine gentlemen that just created this panel are going to be there to answer any questions you have. You're welcome to click that link and transfer over. And if not, in 15 minutes, we have the women's panel. And I'm sure you know, if you are a woman, there's a lot of value. But if you're a man and you're interested in hearing the conversations of what women are dealing with and empowering themselves, it's really for everyone. So this is the end of the recovery panel. You gentlemen can click the link in the chat to go to the breakout line. And thank you so much for being here.
All right. Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you guys for having us.
Of course.